Hi everyone, it's Shelby. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. Today we're going to be doing my May wrap-up. So this is going to be all of the books from the midpoint of May. So I already posted the beginning half of May, what I read. So this will be the end half of May. So we're talking about the rest of the books that I read in May. And I will also be doing my wrap-up for the paranormal romance readathon, which happened in the last week of May. So let's get into all of the books that I finished in May, all the books that I read. So I think total I ended up reading 26 books in May. So that includes the beginning part, all together 26 books, which is the most that I've read in a single month. I also had, that does not include my DNFs, I did have 3 DNFs, so who knows, I may have been longer or not, not really sure. So we'll get into all the books that I read. I'm going to start with the DNFs and then I'll get into the rest of the books just in order that I read them. And then at the end I'll do, since it was the end of May, I'll do the paranormal romance readathon wrap up and all the books that I read for that. So let's get started. So the first one, my first DNF is going to be Sapphire and Steel by Violet Frost, I think. I was trying to read this for, I don't remember why I was trying to read it. I remember somebody that I follow on Instagram really likes it, and was wanting people to read it and really recommended it. And this, I think, is supposed to be like a fantasy romance. I really couldn't get into this. I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't 100% know what was going on. I know it's about this girl who is the like captain of like the princess, like her guard, I guess. Like she's the captain and she's tasked with like, you know, taking care of protecting the princess. That's what I'm trying to say. And the princess is supposed to marry this like rival kingdom's king for like some sort of like political alliance or something. And then I was very confused. I don't know if it was that kingdom's king or a different kingdom's king ends up kidnapping her because he mistakes her for the princess. And they end up having like a romance or something. I don't know. I was very confused. There's a lot of like how like different like fantasy like worlds, they have like their own like names for things. Well, this book did that, but I didn't like because she would just like randomly say, oh yeah, and look at, you can see all blah 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 and this and whatnot, but she never actually explained like what those things were. Like, I'm okay with fantasy worlds like putting in like just random like made up words, but I need like more context to them. Like if they're describing like the landscape or what's around them, like there was no other like context to like for me to have in my mind of like what that looks like. So that was kind of frustrating. And then like I said, I don't know, I just couldn't like jive with the writing style. I just couldn't get into it. So I just decided to stop reading it because I just wasn't really enjoying it. Didn't really seem like I was going to get into enjoying it. Anyway, and then I also DNF'd Forbidden Daddy by Kelly Myers. Yes. I was thinking that I was gonna like this because I think it has like a daddy kink and like an age gap, which usually is kind of like my jam, but this was just like really boring. This is a college student and her like romance with her landlord, and I just like, again, didn't really care about the characters. There was way too much like inner monologue and there wasn't a whole ton of other stuff going on, which I didn't really care for. And I was just like, okay, come on. Like, I just got so tired of all the inner monologue. There wasn't a ton of extra like talking with other characters. There wasn't a ton of other stuff going on. And I was just like really bored. And I did read to, I read to a sex scene, and I'm assuming there's going to be more sex scenes. And like the Daddy King just seemed like it was really random. It just, I don't know, it didn't fit. I don't know, I didn't really care for it. And then I was trying to read Cocky Chef by J.D. Hawkins. I thought this would be cool. It's a chef who owns a restaurant. He's, he almost reminded me a little bit of like Gordon Ramsay, but younger and like hotter, because he's like mean. And then this new chef that's hired at one of his restaurants, and she like messes up on a dish or something, and I guess they end up having a romance. Again, I didn't get too far in this like at all, just because I was not feeling it. I just couldn't really jive with the writing. There's just something about it that I just didn't really care for, so I did not continue reading this. So those are my DNFs. Now we're going to get on to the rest of the books that I read. So the next book after, you know, now we're continuing after the prior like wrap-up video that I posted. So the next book that I read after that is going to be The Dating Plan by Sara Desai, I think is how you say that. If you have watched all my videos before, you know I'm really bad with names. So I don't know if that's 100% how you're supposed to say this, but anyway, this is about this girl, and her name's Daisy, and she works for, I don't remember if she's like a tech or something at some sort of company, and she's from an Indian family, and she keeps getting badgered by her family to get married. They keep, like, her aunts just keep, like, popping up in random places and being like, hey, look at this man that I brought for you. And so she is at, like, this, like, conference or something, and she ends up running into her brother's former best friend at this conference, and she had a crush on him like growing up, but she doesn't like him anymore because he was supposed to take her to prom, and he like stood her up, and then her and her family hasn't seen or spoken to him in like 10 years or something. They end up getting, so they bump into each other, and they end up getting into and forming like a fake relationship. Because then he is back in town because his grandfather died, and he got this in like inheritance, but in order for him to keep the inheritance, he has to get married by the time he's, I don't remember, some age. So they decided to have like a fake engagement and say, hey, we're getting married, so that he can keep this inheritance that he gets, and so that she can have her family like kind of back off and like give her some space. So that's what this one is about. I gave this 1 star. I don't give 1 stars very often. I did not like this. I pushed through it. I probably should have just DNF'd this because I wasn't enjoying it, but I pushed through it because I was trying to read it, because it's also one of my Book of the Month copies, and I'm really behind on reading books from Book of the Month. I just, for the most part, I wasn't enjoying it while I was reading it. And then after I finished it and I was looking at other reviews, and things just like kept sticking in my mind of things that I just didn't like about this book. So first of all, this whole book was just so cliche. Like, it just didn't feel original to me. All the tropes in it. I mean, you can do all these tropes, but like, she's supposed to be this like super quirky character. I didn't really feel like the author had a firm grasp on how she wanted her characters to be, because like Daisy, the girl, she's supposed to be quirky at one point and like shy, but then at other times she's more confident, and like there was just certain things about it that she was just really wishy-washy and kept going back and forth, and it just didn't feel like it was true to the character. And then the guy, what's his name? Liam. He's also kind of wishy-washy. He's supposed to be like this like badass kind of dude. And then she just like kept throwing in these like random things about these people. Like how he's been away for like 10 years. He was like, yeah, I went like motorcycle riding, and then I just ended up in New York, and then randomly he's like, oh yeah, and then by the way I joined like a motorcycle gang for a few years, and which just felt really random, and I didn't really understand why it was in there. There are also some things in here that just like convenient like things that just happened to kind of like further along the plot, which I just didn't really care for. I didn't really like how it ended. There's like a secret sort of like why he abandoned her and didn't take her to prom, and at the end when he kind of like lets her know what actually happened, she's kind of like, oh, I knew that all along. And I was just like, what? Like it didn't make sense. I did not enjoy this. It just needed a ton better writing and better development for the story to work at all. So didn't like this. Then the next one I did, I reread Fixer Up. I read this a couple of years ago when it first came out, and I love this one. This I gave 5 stars when I first read it, and 5 stars again with this reread. I posted a video just recently talking about this series that this book and then the next one that I'm going to talk about is in. So I'm not going to say too much about this because I already did that video. If you're interested in seeing more of my thoughts on this book and the whole series, you can check out that video. But basically this is about this girl, Georgie. She is a clown. That's what her like job, and she's wanting to basically have her own business, like a party planning party kind of business, but she hasn't done that because like her family doesn't really take her seriously. She's the youngest sibling. She's the youngest in her family, so they all kind of just see her as like this kid basically, even though she's in her early 20s. And then Travis is the hero of this one. He is back in town after being a professional baseball player, but he had an injury, so he's no longer able to play. So he's back in town, and he's just kind of being curmudgeon-y because he doesn't really know what to do with his life. Georgie has had a crush on him for forever, and Travis is actually her older brother's best friend. They end up getting into having a fake relationship to try to show people that they are serious. Well, for Georgie. For Travis, there's an opportunity for him to have like a sportscaster, I think, or announcer or something kind of job, but it's with this company that's seen as like family friendly. He in the past has been kind of like a playboy, so he needs to improve his image, kind of show that he's in like a long-term relationship in order for him to potentially get this new job. So like I said, they go into a fake relationship, and lots of stuff happens from there. I love this one. It's so good. I love Georgie's character. She is one that I think Tessa Bailey is able to write a really good, like, quirky character. She's so hilarious. I love how, like, Travis, like, little bits and pieces in the book where he's just, like, starting to, like, notice her for being, like, an adult and seeing her as a woman and, like, starting to become attracted to her. I love this. I love how supportive they are of each other. It's just so cute. It's like one of my favorite books. I already read Love Her or Lose Her in my prior, wrap up. So then I finished the series. So I read Tools of Engagement. This is the last book in the, I think this is the Hot and Hammered series. This is about Georgie's older sister, Bethany. And she's part of their family's, like company where they like fix up houses, like flipping kind of houses or whatever, but she only does like the staging part of it, and she wants to have more involvement with the company and like picking houses and the demolition and designing like the layout of the houses, but her brother doesn't want her to do that. He says no, so she decides she's going to leave the family company and do her own thing. And meanwhile, the hero of the story is Wes, and he also works for their family's company, but he's had a crush on Bethany since he first came to town. So when she says that she's leaving and going to start her own business, he decides he's going to go with her to help her out. Even though Bethany doesn't really like him, they get into lots of arguments. So this is a little bit of enemies to lovers, even though Wes like really likes her. It's more so that she just doesn't like him. And then there's this like TV company producer, almost like an HGTV show, and they hear about them like feuding, like them siblings with flipping houses companies, like feuding, whatever. And they decide they want to do a like mini TV show about it. And they each get like a house, and somebody is gonna decide like a winner, like who flipped the house the best. And whoever wins, like if Bethany wins, she can continue with her own company and her own business, and her brother can't say like crap about it. But if her brother wins, then she has to kind of like come back to the company and be like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go back to what I was doing before. Anyway, so I gave this 3.5 stars. This is the lowest that I've rated any of the books in this series, mostly because I didn't really care for Bethany's character. She is very much a perfectionist and wants to be in control of everything. She has anxiety, which I don't really care for in my characters, just because I just find it so frustrating. Mostly because like she cares about what other people think so much that she doesn't really do anything for herself. Everything that she does is for other people, like how they perceive her, like how she gets dressed in the morning and what she wears every day is based off of who she knows that she's going to be running into that day, and she wants to give out this persona for those specific people. The same with her house. It's all for other people, so that she gives off this persona of having her life together, that she's perfect and that she's great, even though in reality she's not. She's freaking out about all these things. She hasn't been, for the most part, like I think in Georgie's book she gets cheated on and she decides that she's gonna go on like a man hiatus. But for the most part, has bad luck with relationships because she's not giving off, letting them know who she actually is. She's, again, this persona. She's showing off this person that she thinks they want her to be. And so then when these, guys start getting a little bit closer to her and wanting to know more about her, she does things to try to push them away, or they end up breaking up with her or whatnot, because she's so afraid that they're going to see all of her flaws and not like her. Which again, it's very frustrating to me because it's just so exhausting. Like, I don't understand how she can continue doing that. But she does work through this. I think Wes is really good for her because he can see some of like her tics where she starts getting like anxious about if people see like a flaw or whatnot. And that's part of why he kind of agitates her and like pokes at her and makes her mad, just because he knows that by making her mad, she will like stop like psychoanalyzing what's going on, and she will just kind of like calm down and forget about that thing. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really care for Bethany. I liked that her personality and her character traits that she needed to work on, she did like develop throughout the story and get better. I liked Wes. He is actually in town because his sister decided that she couldn't handle taking care of her daughter and being a mom anymore. She also has a history of like drug abuse, so she does end up actually getting help for that, which is good. So Wes is actually taking care of his niece. So I mean, it kind of sort of fits like a single parent trope because he's trying to like take care of his niece on his own. But anyway, yeah. Then I read Then Came You by Lisa Kleypas. This I read for, I think I read this for the Historical Hellions book club. This was their pick for May. This is about this girl, Lily, and she is, I don't know, she is really cool. She like plays with like all the men. She goes out and gambles. She was left an inheritance by her aunt when her aunt died. So she is not married. She basically does what she wants. She's super cool. So when we first started out in this book, her sister is supposed to be getting married to this man. His name's Alex. And there's this other guy that really likes her sister and is upset that she's getting married to this other man. And he is like pleading to Lily to help him like stop the marriage so that he can marry her sister, because he thinks that, you know, he's actually in love with her and it's a better match. So she's like, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll meet this guy, and his name's Alex, who her sister's supposed to marry. She's like, I'll meet him. I'll see how he is, and if I don't like him, I'll see what I can do to stop the marriage. So when she meets him, he is, she doesn't like him at all. He's very controlling. He is a little bit scary and a little mean. So Lily doesn't think that he would be a good fit for her sister at all. So she decides that she's going to try to do what she can to stop the marriage. And then Lily ends up falling in love with Alex, and they end up having a romance. This one I gave 5 stars to. I loved this. I loved Lily's character. There is you find out pretty early on, Lily actually has a daughter that she doesn't have anymore. First you're not really sure like if her daughter died, but her daughter is just missing, sort of. So a lot of her motivation behind what she is doing is to try to find her daughter. So I love that. I love that she's a mother. I loved Alex. I loved their bickering because it's definitely an enemies to lovers story. I just loved it. And since it is also an enemies to lovers, when they do get into arguments, and then there's like so much passion with it when they like collide and, you know, end up kissing, or when then their romance starts to develop. It just like, it's so good. I flew through this, and this is, you know, not a short book. This is 400 pages. Yeah, 400 or so pages. I read this in like a couple of days. I loved it. It was great. Then I read Kulti by Mariana Zapata. I'm super behind on reading this book. This one is about Sal, and she's a professional women's like soccer player, and she's in a team or something in Texas, and they end up getting a new coach for their team, and their new coach is his name's Kulti. His last name's Kulti. I think his first name like Rainer, something like that. And he is a like world famous professional soccer player, and he had retired like a couple years prior to this. Sal loves him. He is her idol. She has worshipped him ever since she first saw him on a soccer field on TV. So she's like kind of freaking out that he's going to be one of her coaches. And then it's kind of one of those things where, you know, that saying that if, you know, be careful, watch out with your idols, you know, if you actually meet your idols, it kind of ruins it because they kind of suck. So that's kind of what happened here. He's a jerk. He, you know, gives off, he doesn't really like her. He is very quiet too, and another curmudgeon-y kind of person. He also ends up being mean to her dad because her dad is also a super big fan of his. And she's like really close to her dad. So when he's mean to her dad, she's like, okay, that's like the last straw. And she stands up to him like, you're not allowed to act that way to my dad. Like, that's not okay. So it kind of starts off with a little bit of like enemies to lovers. And then, you know, once she does that and is like, hey, that's not cool that you were so mean to my dad, he, you know, gives him like an apology, like, I'm sorry, and like sends him some like things like signed, I guess. So then they actually start forming like a friendship. And then it lends into like a romantic relationship, like later on in the book. This is very, 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 very slow burn. I gave 5 stars to this. I loved this. I wasn't sure how I was gonna like it because I'm usually not a fan of slow burn, especially this slow like this, but it wasn't like any, you know, nothing was happening. There was a lot of development towards their relationship, and I loved it. There's like some things that get like revealed, you know, later in the book about like why he decided to like specifically coach her team and like come back from retirement and just all these things. And I'm just like, I like want to reread it. Like, that's a sign to me of like why I might rate something 5 stars, is if I finish it and then I love it so much I immediately want to go back and reread it. So that is this book. I loved it. I'm so upset that I waited so long to read this because it was so good. Okay, then I read Eleanor and Grey by Brittainy C. Cherry. I've never read any Brittainy C. Cherry books before. This is about this girl Eleanor, and it starts off when her and this guy Grayson are in high school, and she finds out that her mother has cancer. So Grayson ends up in like talking to her at a party, and he like finds out about her mother having cancer, and he decides that he wants to be her friend because he recently had his grandfather died from cancer. So he wants to like befriend her and be like, hey, I'm here for you because I know, you know, going through that, how that feels. I don't want you to be alone in this. So they form a friendship, and then they end up forming sort of a romantic relationship, kind of. But things happen since her mother has cancer and it ends up not going well. They end up moving away from Grayson because her mother wants to be like her final like days, basically wants to be on a beach. That's all her life. That's all she's ever wanted to go and be around, is the water and the ocean, the beach. So they move away. Then it's like several years later because Eleanor and Grayson end up kind of like losing touch with each other because they like go to college and they try to talk to each other, but they can't ever get their schedules to fit, and just they kind of fall out. So meanwhile, then I think it's 10 years later, several years later, it like skips forward, and Eleanor comes back to their hometown, and she is a nanny, and she ends up getting hired by Grayson to be the nanny for his 2 kids. And he's going through some grief and turmoil because his wife had passed away in a pretty brutal car accident that had like his oldest daughter has like a lot of scarring from, and she like walks with a limp. There's something going on with like how she's walking because of this accident. So then she comes back in town, and he is like nothing like how he was before when she knew him. He's grumpy and he's really mean and standoffish. And so then she's trying to, you know, help take care of his daughters, and then she's also kind of trying to help him too with his grieving process. So then they, you know, then end up later forming back their kind of romantic relationship. So it's got kind of like a second chance, friends to lovers kind of thing. This was a tearjerker because of all the cancer and death. I did give this 4 stars. I did enjoy this. There was a few things that I was kind of didn't really care for. Like, honestly, like Grayson's character, like his later years, it just like there was a little bit of a disconnect for me with his character because he flipped so drastically. Like, he was nothing like his prior character when he was younger, and it just, I don't know, something about that didn't really feel right. But I mean, overall, I did like this book. Yeah, I did. I cried a lot with this one. Read Beyond the Sea by Keira Andrews. This is a male-male romance, and this is kind of a survival romance. This is about Troy, who is in like a boy band with his brother, and something happens. His brother like is doing drugs, and Troy's like, I've had enough of this, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and he decides that he's gonna like quit the band. And they were in Australia playing like shows. So he's like, I'm gonna quit, I'm going back to America, and he ends up getting like a private flight to try to go back. But meanwhile, on the way back, they run into storms and their plane actually crashes. And him and the co-pilot are the only 2 people to survive, which there was only 3 people on board. There was only, you know, the captain is the only one who died, but still, it's really sad. So anyway, so they're the only ones that have survived, and they're on this random island in the Pacific. So they're basically just trying to survive and stay alive on this island, and are waiting for somebody to come and rescue them. So the co-pilot's name is Brian, and they're there. I don't remember how long they're there before they do end up getting rescued. But while they're there, they end up forming a romantic relationship. I don't think either one of them had ever been in a relationship with another man prior to this. And I don't think either of them had ever considered themselves like gay or bisexual prior to this. But part of it was like starting out as just kind of like, hey, I haven't had sex in a while. You want to like, I'll scratch your itch and you can scratch my itch kind of situation. And then they find out that they like really like it, you know, each other, and like it when this other man like does stuff. And then, yeah, so I gave this 3 stars. It was nothing like super like stood out to me that it was like super like wow, super memorable either, but it also wasn't a terrible read. It wasn't bad, so that's kind of middle of the road. It was 3. It was fine. I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I might try to read some other Keira Andrews books. I know she does like a lot of male romances. I think she's got maybe like a historical like pirate one that I might want to read. So we'll see. Then I read It Happened When Autumn by Lisa Kleypas, and I was looking at my book, and my book is like tearing up here in the corner, which makes me really sad. Here's the step back for this one. This one is the second book in Lisa Kleypas's Wallflower series. So this just continues on the first one. There's like a group of friends who are like wallflowers. They just kind of stand in like the side of the room. Nobody really pays attention to them. First one, they decide that they're gonna group together, become friends, and help each other try to find spouses, because that's their goal. All of them are wanting to get married at some point. So this is about Lillian, and she is from America. Her family, her sister is also part of this wallflower group, but her family has come to England because her mother wants them to find proper English nobleman husbands for them. This has an enemies to lovers trope because She does not like, ends up being the hero of the story, Marcus. She does not like Marcus, and Marcus does not like her because he does not see her as being a proper, genteel lady. She likes doing tons of things that are not considered appropriate for women to do. She likes, going outside. She doesn't like riding side saddle on a horse. She, speaks her mind and says what she wants. Kind of similar to the other Lisa Kleypas book. I kind of like my characters in historical romances to kind of be like this and be more independent. So they don't like each other. But Lillian ends up buying this like perfume from somebody that it was like basically sold to her that it will like find her like true love or whatnot, and will attract men to her. But the only one that seems to be attracted to this perfume and the scent ends up being Marcus. They end up getting into like a little tangle because they're talking or arguing or something. And then like some people like walk by that she doesn't want them to know that she's like there, so they're like in a hiding place together, and he like smells her and's like, oh my gosh, what is this scent? I can't get enough of it. And then they start kissing, and then yada yada yada. And then their romance kind of ensues from there. So this is really cute. I loved it. I gave this 4 stars. So I didn't love it as much as the other Lisa Kleypas book, but I did really enjoy this one. Again, I really like these like headstrong female characters. There's something about it that I just really enjoy, especially in my historical romances, because I guess it's just because I'm a bit of a feminist. I just want more of my female characters to be like that. Like, I get so tired of them in these stories to, how women were only expected to get married and have babies, and that was their sole purpose. And it doesn't sit right with me. I'm like, that's just like not cool. I don't like it, even though I know that's how it was. So I really like when I find historical romances like this, where there's female characters that want to be independent and do their own thing, and they don't care what all these dang men think of them, and they're gonna do what they want. I just think that's awesome. I just love her. And then Marcus, of course, at first he doesn't really like it, but then he gets to know her a little bit more, and then he's like all for it, and he just like supports her and is like, I want you to be who you are. And I love that. So this was so good. I can't wait to continue on my Wallflower series reads. So hopefully I'll get to more of those in June. The book that I read before we get to my wrap up for the Paranormal Romance Readathon, I read Filthy by Serena Akeroyd. This is the first book. I think what is said on Goodreads is that this is the 5 Points Mob Collection series. This is one of Jen from the Book Refuge. This is one of her like favorite series, but she always calls it the Filthy Feckers, I think. So I don't really 100% know where that comes from, if that might be like the old series name. But anyway, I read this for the Ravished by Romance Readathon, or not Readathon, book club. The Ravished by Romance book club. This was their pick for May. This is kind of hard to say what the synopsis of this one is. This is about this girl, and I have to, Aoife? I always have to like look up her pronunciation for her name, because it's like a Irish, like, Gaelic name, I think. Something like that. She owns this like tea shop. It was actually her mother's, but then her mother passed away. And so she has this tea shop that this company is wanting to try to buy out from her and make a different like building in that spot. And she keeps saying no, she doesn't want to sell. And then this guy comes, and his name is Finn. He comes and is like, I want to buy this building. And she finds out that he is part of the Irish mob, where they're at. I don't remember if they're like in New York. I think they're in New York. He's part of the Irish mob, and he actually like shows her pictures and was like blackmailing her about something. And so she's like, okay, I'll sell, because, you know, she's being blackmailed. And then he's all like, well, now you're also going to come with me and you're going to sleep with me as part of payment for giving us all this grief and not selling to us sooner, because he's in the mob or whatnot. So they have like they're supposed to be one night stand, but then he, you know, while they're having sex, he finds out that she's a virgin, and she's like his like ideal like woman for him. And he's like, oh, you're a virgin. Okay, well, I have to marry you then, because that's how he is or something. I don't know. Yeah, and then there's some other like mob political stuff going on in this book. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I might bump this down to 3. For the most part, I did enjoy this book while I was reading it. It was much longer than I think it should have been. There's probably like at least 100 pages, if not like 150 pages, that probably could have just been cut from the book. Part of the like politically stuff with like rival gangs and whatnot, I didn't quite understand what was going on with that. The Finn and Aoife's relationship was very, very much insta-love, which was fine. I guess I didn't have like too many problems with that. It was okay. It did get so Aoife does end up getting wounded in like a gang battle kind of thing. So it was kind of frustrating, because there's a big chunk of this book where she's just like not doing anything, and she's just like recovering from being wounded, which is kind of frustrating. So I don't know. I did remember to watch the live show for this one, and a lot of other people were saying like the other books in this series, like it gets better. The other books of this series are really good, so I might actually continue reading this series just to kind of see if I like the other ones a little bit better than this one. We'll see. I don't know. So now we're finally getting into my wrap up for the Paranormal Romance Readathon. Like I said, this was in the last week of May to like Memorial Day, and this was just all about reading paranormal romance. So there was like prompts, there was like a bingo board, which I don't think I actually like got all of the stuff for the bingo board, if I remember correctly. So the first one that I read for this, I read Slave to Sensation by Nalini Singh. This is the first book in her Psy Changeling series, which is a huge series. Lots of people really love this series. It's a pretty long series too. This is about Sasha and Lucas. So basically there are, in this like series, this world, there are Psy, who is this like race of people that they have like psychic abilities, and some like have psychic like powers basically. But this race has like eradicated emotions and feelings, so they aren't supposed to feel any emotions. And then we have the changelings, which are basically like shifters. Like if you ever read any other type of book that has like shifters, that's basically what changelings are. So Sasha is a Psy, but she has a problem because she actually has feelings, and she wants things, like she feels lust and all these other emotions that she's not supposed to have. So she's trying to hide this, because if other Psy know that she has emotions, then she'll get sent to this like place. Then I don't 100% know what happens at this place, but basically like she says it's like worse than death. Like she would rather die than go to this place. So I don't know if she will end up getting tortured or what happens at this place, but it's bad news. She can't go there. So she ends up meeting Lucas, who is the alpha of a particular like shifter pack. They end up meeting because they're getting in like some sort of like business deal relationship, where Sasha, the company Sasha works for, is going to end up building like houses for this like shifter community or something. But the whole like deal getting together and doing this is kind of a front for Lucas to try to get close to the Desai, because he's actually wanting to try to investigate a bunch of murders that have been taking place of changeling, I think it's women. I don't know if there's any men that were killed. I think it's mostly changeling women, and killed by a Sai, or maybe several Sai. He doesn't really know, but he's wanting to investigate their murders and figure out the culprit and what's going on. So that's the gist of that book. I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. This is very much like a forbidden type love, because they're like not supposed to like mix, especially for Sasha, because like I said, she's not supposed to feel like emotions or feelings or anything. So the fact that she does, they end up having like some dreams about each other, and she is like attracted to Lucas, and Lucas is very much attracted to her. But it was really cute. I did enjoy this. Not sure if I'm going to continue on with the series. I might. I have a bad problem of like reading the first one and not continuing on, especially for really long series. I'm really bad about reading long series, so I might read some more, but I doubt I'll end up finishing it. That's just how I am. There's so many other books that I want to read. I don't know. I'd like to, but I don't know if it's gonna happen. And the next one that I read for the paranormal romance readathon was Deal with the Demon by Chace Verity. This was actually the like group book pick. This is a novella. This is about this single mom, and she's having a tough time with like finances and everything. She ends up losing her job, and she's going through tough times, and she ends up getting this, I don't remember if she gets something in the mail or whatnot, and she ends up downloading this app that's supposed to help her. And it turns out that this app brings this like demon, and he is supposed to be like a human like success demon, and part of his like contract or whatnot is for him to help her find success. So then they end up forming like a romantic relationship. I give this 3 stars. I didn't really like this as much as I was hoping to like this. I know Tamika from oh shoot, I don't remember what her channel name is. Library of Tomes. Tamika from Library of Tomes, she really liked this one, and I think somebody else really liked this one, so they kind of like hyped this one up, and I don't know, I just didn't really care for it. She ends up having him do like domestic type things to help her out. She like has him like watch her kids while she has this like night job that pays really well, so that she can then try to find like a better like full-time job. So that's like all she has him do, is just like be like a stay-at-home dad basically, and like help her out at her house. She doesn't really do anything else with him, which I guess was a little bit unique. I haven't really seen that before with a demon story, but at the same time, I didn't really like, because it didn't really feel like it was like a demon story, like a deal with a demon, because the demon guy didn't really get anything out of it. Usually with demon deals, it's like, I'll do this for you, and then you're gonna do this thing for me, which didn't really happen. And I just didn't really understand that. That's not, if I'm going into like a demon book or a demon like romance, this is not what I'm expecting and what I'm usually looking for. So in that regard, I kind of was like, eh. But it wasn't bad. That's why I gave it 3 stars. It was just kind of middle of the road. It was okay. Then I read Spell of Desire Volume 1 by, I'm going to totally butcher this one, Tomu Ohmi, I think. I don't know. This is a paranormal romance manga. So I read this for one of the prompts. I think it was like read a different format. I've never read a manga before, so that's why I thought I would pick this one and try this one out. This is about, and again, I'm going to butcher the names because, Karuko, I think, this girl, and she has, like, again, a family business shop, whatever, her grandmother's, I think, and things keep happening, weird things keep happening, and then randomly this guy shows up, his name Kanami, and he's like, hey, you're a witch, and I'm here to help you control your powers. Your mother who abandoned you is this super powerful, like, witch that does black magic and yada yada yada. And she's all like, whoa, what's going on? Like, how do I just, like, randomly have powers? And what? I'm a witch? No way. I don't know what's going on. So she, like, if she gets, like, scared or, like, really strong emotions, like, her powers kind of get out of control. And it's kind of weird. She, like, I guess, like, ends up attracting men to her when her powers get out of control. And it can be bad because there'll just be, like, the swarm of men that are, like, trying to get on top of her and get to her. So Kanami helps her control her powers and, like, stop them from happening by kissing her. I gave this 3 stars. This is okay. Again, this is not really what I was expecting. I was honestly expecting this to be, like, a little bit more steamy than it was. This was very, very, like, PG, which is fine if that's what you're into. I'm usually used to reading more steamy reads. But then there was also part of it, it was just kind of like everything just happened. It was kind of came, like, out of nowhere. I don't know. And then part of why I do read graphic novels on occasion, but not very often. And I don't think I will read too many more manga, mostly just because it's hard for me to, like, connect to the characters. Since you just get dialogue from them, I have that problem with connecting to the characters that I get better from, like, a normal book, like a traditional book instead of a manga. I don't know. I might try out some more manga in the future. I don't really know. I probably will not continue on with this series just because I didn't really care that much. I just wasn't as invested with the characters, and I don't really care about what else is going to happen. So, and again, it wasn't bad, so that's why it doesn't get a lower rating, but it wasn't like a wow kind of book. I read Queen Takes Queen by Jolie Sue Burkhart. This is the 3rd book in their Vampire Queen series. So I had already read the first 2 books in this series last year, I think. So I don't really know how much to say about this one. Basically, this series is about this girl, Sara. I know it started with an S. Sara. And so in the first book, she is on her own and she knows there are monsters in the world, and she's, like, trying to run away from all these monsters that want to hurt her. And in the midst of her, like, running away this one time, there are these men that appear to help rescue her, and they tell her that she is actually a vampire queen and that they are knights and that they are supposed to protect her and help her to start a, like, nest and help her build her power to help protect herself from all these monsters. So that's how like the first book kind of starts out, and then all the books from there just kind of escalate. So it's vampire. She does form like a reverse harem kind of thing because she ends up getting more knights basically to in her like harem, and they like exchange blood, and that helps her get more powerful and then they also get more powerful so that they can help protect her, and yada yada yada. I give this 4 stars mostly because I read the first one and I loved it. The second one I was kind of feeling like, okay, we're starting to get kind of like things are just kind of like repeating themselves, sort of. So then I didn't continue on. So I read this one because one of the prompts for the readathon was to read like a sequel. And this just like reminded me why I loved this book at the beginning, like the series at the beginning. This is just like what I want in a vampire book, in a vampire series. I love that she's a queen and she's like the powerful one, and all these men are like worshiping her, and there's like blood stuff. They and kind of like bloody, like almost orgies. It's a ride. It's ridiculous, and I loved it. This one, Queen Takes Queen, this one, she goes to try to make this other queen they call it a sib, but basically she kind of ends up sort of controlling another queen and their kingdom. She goes to do that because, again, by doing that, it makes her more powerful, and then this lesser queen does it to have her protection since she is a more powerful queen. So that's basically all that happens in this one. There's like other stuff kind of going on, but I don't really want to say like too much because I don't want to like ruin anything, but that's what's going on. I really enjoyed it. Then I read Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert. This I read for the prompt, read a Black author. This one is a novella. This is a like shifter werewolf kind of book. This I really liked. This is about this girl, Chastity, and she comes from a whole family of hunters or whatever. Like all the women in her family are hunters, and they go out and kill werewolves. But she doesn't do that because when she was born, her parents, some like person, like seer or somebody, had like a prophecy that if she did kill somebody, then her heart would break, or like she would something along those lines. So they don't let her go out and hunt. So she is helping, again, to help her out her family's company. Lots of women are working in like with their families like shops or companies in this wrap up. But she's working at her family's, I think they have like a like coffee shop or something, and she notices that this werewolf guy just keeps coming in like repeatedly and keeps wanting to talk to her, and she doesn't know what's up with that. So one day this guy ends up asking her out on a date, and so she's like, yes, I'll go out on a date with you, because she thinks in her mind, she's like, okay, if I go out, I can like kill this guy, kill this werewolf, and then I can like be cool and my family will let me actually go out and hunt with them. But meanwhile, this werewolf guy, his name is Luke. Yes, Luke. He wants to be with Chastity because he knows that she is his mate. So he wants to be with her. So it is a little bit of an enemies to lovers kind of, because she doesn't like him because she's like, you're a werewolf, I'm supposed to kill you, you don't have a soul, you're bad. But then she like starts on their date, kind of like starts talking to him a little bit, and this was just like, it was so cute, which honestly I'm usually not looking for in like my paranormal romance. I want it to be a little bit more dark. So the fact that this was totally opposite, but I actually like really enjoyed that. It was so like funny and quirky. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this 4 stars. It was so good. And I think it shows that this is part of a series, but I don't know if Talia Hibbert has ever wrote any other books in this series. I don't know. If she has, I'll have to check into that, because if she has, I definitely want to read more because I enjoyed this so much. It was so good. Then the next one I read was Queen Takes Rook by Julie Burkhart. So this didn't actually fit for like any of the prompts. I didn't have to read this, but I read the 3rd one. So I was like, I'm just going to continue on with the series. I'm going to read the 4th one. This I only gave 3.5 stars because she ends up finally sort of battling, kind of, but she ends up meeting this other queen, the Keisha, I think is her name, and she is the Queen of New York, and she's basically like the big queen over America, and has been causing some problems for Sara. She's kind of been like the big bad so far. There is another, like, there's the Triune, which is like basically like this, almost, it sounds like kind of like a committee of queens that like they are the final the rulers of all of the vampire kingdoms or whatnot. And then there's some other like villains in this series, but she, for the most part so far, has been like the big bad. So they finally meet, and that kind of ends sort of well. I gave this 3.5 stars, mostly just because I was kind of underwhelmed with how it ended. I was expecting there to be much more of a struggle and a bigger battle than there was. But overall, I did still enjoy this. I think we'll see. I might continue on with reading this series into June just because I'm like really enjoying it. Again, it has like everything that I'm looking for in a romance, like a vampire romance, especially one that's just not like one-on-one where there's multiple, reverse harem type thing. It was great. And the last book that I read for the month of May, the last book that I read for the Paranormal Romance Readathon was Wolfsong by TJ Klune. I read this for, I think there's a prompt for like LGBTQ or a queer book or something. This is a werewolf story. This is about Ox. And when he is a teenager, he is like walking home from work one day, and he comes across this boy on the road to his house that like is immediately like enamored with him and wants to know everything about him and wants to be like best friends with him. So they become friends. And then Ox finds out later on that this boy, before meeting him, hadn't spoken. He hadn't talked or said anything in a year. And then he also a few years, I think it was a few years later, or maybe it was just a year later, he finds out that this boy and his family are actually werewolves. And they are very accepting of him and kind of wanting him to become a part of their family, sort of. He actually, like, when they have like a full moon, he goes with them out into this like clearing when they shift into werewolves, and he like hangs out with them and runs around with them and plays with them, and it's great times. But then there's this bad guy that comes around, that you kind of has a history with Joe. Joe is the boy who, as the years go on, he like isn't like a boy anymore. And he causes problems for the family, and Joe ends up at one point like leaving to try to like hunt down this guy. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in this, a lot of like time span for this. This is a, like I said, friends to lovers, because this is a romance between Ox and Joe. Once Joe gets older, they form a relationship and a romance, but to Ox's eyes, they were always friends, even though Joe, as soon as he saw Ox, you know, I guess sort of like, not necessarily like a romantic or sexual relationship, because he was only like 10 when he first saw him, but he knew that he wanted to be with Ox like forever, even though at first it's just a friendship kind of thing. I gave this 4 stars. This was really good. It was pretty long, and I would consider this a slow burn too. I didn't necessarily care for Joe leaving. That did end up causing some problems. There is a little bit of angst going on in this book, but overall I did really enjoy this. I'm interested in to see the next book, because I think the next one has some characters that we kind of like in this one. They kind of say that they had a relationship in the past, but something happened and they are no longer together. So I'm hoping they get back together in the next one, because I think it's about their romance. So I will probably continue on this with this series. We'll just see how soon I'm able to get to that. So there we go. That was a very long wrap up. That was all the books that I read for the paranormal romance readathon. Ugh, mouthful. And then also all the rest of the books that I read in May. So tell me, I would love to hear what like your favorites are, what all you read in the month of May. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me and find out what else I'm going to be reading for June, since that's now here as I'm filming this. But yeah, so hope you all have a great day, and I'll see y'all later. Bye guys.